Brian eased the car into a narrow curbside space across the street from the Star Witness's office building, a modest structure that looked painfully ordinary for the weight it carried in Julia's life. He shifted into park and glanced at the rearview mirror. Julia was already reaching for the door handle, her phone in hand, jaw set. "I may be a while," she said flatly as she stepped out. "Wait outside." "Yes, ma'am," Brian replied instinctively as the door closed behind her. He watched her stride toward the entrance, fast, purposeful, like someone marching into battle rather than a meeting. Then she disappeared inside, and the street settled back into its midday rhythm. Brian adjusted the temperature, folded his hands loosely over the steering wheel and waited. Minutes stretched. Then more minutes. Brian checked the time once, then deliberately stopped. He had learned quickly, even in his short tenure, that watching the clock only made it louder. Instead, he observed the small details: pedestrians passing with coffee cups, a delivery truck double parking and earning a chorus of honks, clouds sliding lazily across the sky. Nearly 2 hours passed this way, the car idling, the city breathing around him. Inside the building, time moved very differently. Julia sat across from the witness in a cramped office that smelled faintly of old paper and burnt coffee. She had abandoned pretense early on. This was no longer a meeting. It was a plea. "You are not a footnote in this case," she said, leaning forward, hands clasped tightly together. "You are the case. Without your testimony, the narrative fractures. The jury won't see the pattern. They won't understand the intent." The witness avoided her eyes, fingers twisting together in their lap. "I understand that," they said quietly. "But you're not the one who has to live with the consequences after. I'm the one who has to look over my shoulder." Julia tried everything: logic, reassurance, appeals to duty, appeals to conscience. She spoke about the victims, about accountability, about how rarely the system offered a real chance to expose the truth so cleanly. Her voice grew hoarse, her arguments circling back on themselves as she searched for something, anything, that would land. Finally, the witness sighed, rubbing their temples. "I can't give you an answer today," they said. "I need the weekend. I need to think about it without pressure." The words hit Julia like a slow, dull blow. She knew better than to push further. Pressing now could fracture what little trust remained. "Fine," she said at last, standing and smoothing her jacket. "But understand this. I don't have the luxury of waiting. Every day matters." The witness nodded but said nothing. Julia left without another word. When she stepped back onto the sidewalk, the late afternoon light felt harsher than before. Her shoulders were tense, her thoughts knotted tightly with frustration and fatigue. Brian straightened when he saw her approaching and opened the door immediately. "Welcome back," he said, gently. Julia slid into the seat, staring straight ahead. Brian pulled away from the curb smoothly, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The silence stretched, thick but not hostile. Yet. After a few blocks, he cleared his throat softly. "Long meeting?" he ventured, careful with his tone. Julia exhaled sharply, but didn't respond. Brian hesitated, then tried again, aiming for neutral ground. "Just thought I'd ask, have you eaten today? There's a great pizza place 2 blocks from here. Quick service, really good slice. Might help take the edge off." The response came swift and cutting. "I wish I had the time," Julia said, her voice edged with disdain, "to think about trivial things like pizza." Brian's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, but he kept his eyes on the road. "Some of us don't get to pause our lives for lunch," Julia continued. Some of us are responsible for cases that actually matter. Your job, your one job, is to get me from point A to point B. That's it. Moving forward, I prefer you do exactly that and not try to be creative. It's unwarranted. The words hung in the air, sharp and unmistakable. Brian felt them land, absorbed them without reaction. He nodded once, slowly. "I understand," he said, simply, and then he fell silent. The rest of the drive passed without a single word, no small talk, no questions, just the low hum of the engine and the rhythm of traffic lights changing from red to green. Julia stared out the window, replaying the meeting in her mind, the witnesses' uncertainty looping relentlessly. Her anger cooled into something heavier, disappointment perhaps, or fear. But she made no move to soften what she'd said. Ryan pulled up in front of her office building with the same smooth precision as before. He shifted into park, stepped out, and opened her door. Julia exited without acknowledgement, already dialing her phone, already moving on to the next problem. As she disappeared into the building, Ryan returned to the driver's seat and sat for a moment longer than necessary. He exhaled, steady and quiet, then put the car back into gear. The city swallowed him up again, indifferent as ever, while above it all, Julia prepared for another round, still chasing control, still racing against time, and still unaware of the small human costs accumulating quietly in her wake.